Alrighty, news of the week episode on this Monday evening, and we had a bit of an ownership change when it comes to some of the news that has happened in these past couple of days. That's something we don't usually ever see, where we have a new majority owner take charge of an MLS team, and in this case, that team is Sporting KC, as they have announced that they have a new majority owner, as Peter Molick is the new majority owner of Sporting KC after he purchased the majority stake of the club for $700 million. Now, obviously, that is a lot of money to basically purchase a majority stake for Sporting KC, and you could maybe say he might have overpaid it a little bit, but I guess nowadays in the day of age of MLS team, and if you want to purchase a majority stake, it's definitely higher than what we've seen before, and this is also kind of the reason why there are some teams that are still kind of struggling in terms of trying to finally sell the team. Hint, hint, the Vancouver Whitecaps, and in some extents the San Jose Earthquakes as well. But this is definitely good news for Sporting KC fans to see a new owner, and he has said pretty much all the good things in the press conference about them being more ambitious when it comes to moving forward, and definitely not afraid to spend money to improve the team. And that obviously we'll see whether or not if that is the case, especially with the way that for Sporting KC, we know this team has been a very good team in the past, but in the last couple of years, it definitely felt like they have kind of fall behind the projectile, and that what was once a team that's very good when it comes to scouting in terms of players that they know that could fit well into the team, and also did very well when it comes to promote talent within the academy. That feels like it's kind of gone downhill in the last couple of years. So hopefully with this new ownership change, maybe that of course will bring a huge injection to this team, and there's no doubt that I think it will, especially with a team that, I know heading into this season, it's probably going to be another rough year for Sporting KC. This team is definitely in the beginning of a deep rebuild and moving on from the Peter Remise era. But we'll see whether or not if this new ownership change might be the start of a turnaround and get themselves back to the glory days that they had in the mid 2010s, when they was just such a dominant team in the 2010s, always making the playoffs as well, and even winning MLS Cup during that timeline as well. Now, moving on. So, Atlanta United, they actually have now received 100,000 general allocation money and 100,000 general allocation money, that is, from RSL, and they did that in exchange for a high performance director. Now, obviously, normally I don't really kind of mention these kind of news, and you might think it's an irrelevant kind of news, but the reason why I want to mention is that I'm an MLS sicko. You know that I always want to mention some of the most sicko kind of move as possible. I feel like this is right up there in terms of being peak sicko move. Like, I've seen Cam being traded for a lot of different reasons, mostly of course on players, and even sometimes for international spots, and also for some draft picks in the past. But I think this is the first time I've ever seen a high performance director being traded because of Gam. Like, he must be a very good high performance director if Atlanta United is able to get 100,000 general allocation money and give away their high performance director to RSL in a sense. So yeah, there's no doubt that, again, it's kind of crazy see to kind of mention this, but again, it's very sicko kind of move, and it just shows you why, how in the days of MLS, I've always had a chuckle at the fact that I've seen teams find new ways in terms of making sure that they use their allocation money and do it in some of the most strangest possible way possible. Now, moving on in terms of actually talk about actual signing and actually kind of be a little bit more serious now. So Inter Miami has officially announced that they have acquired Tadeo Allende on a permanent deal. So, a couple of days ago, Jorge Mas, the president and one owner for Inter Miami, have mentioned the fact that they really want to keep Tadeo Allende and are working hard to try to make this a permanent deal from Celta Vigo. Now it seems like it's officially done. And what's even more interesting is the fact that it's not going to be requiring a DP spot, and I'm pretty sure that's going to please a lot of MLS fans and see that Inter Miami is able to sign Tadeo Allende, the guy that pretty much broke the record for the most goals scored last season in the playoffs and not even require a DP. And honestly, I know he did very well during the playoffs, and he was pretty much in the form of his life doing the playoff run that resulted in an MLS Cup. But I do think that in the end, it's great the fact that they decide not to get him and basically require a DP spot. He's not really kind of a DP level of a player. I mean, throughout this season, you can kind of see his struggle throughout the season as well. There were times where Inter Miami fans were kind of criticizing him because of his poor finishing that he has in some of these games. And like I said, he really kind of found his form in the playoffs and really had the best run of form of his life, which is something that it would be very hard for him to replicate heading into next season as well. But at the same time, they also want to keep him as well, and it was tough for them to do so. But again, when you of course are playing with Inter Miami, and as we know, what Inter Miami have done this off season, and whether if it's fair or not, depending on who you ask, at the end of the day, they Inter Miami are doing what they need to do, and are also still following within the guideline of MLS to make this deal done. So yeah, it's definitely good for them to, of course, keep a guy that was a huge part in terms of their playoff run and their MLS come run last year as well. Now, RSL has officially signed Lucas Ingo via the re-entry draft. So remember a couple of News of the Week episode, I talked about how there were a couple of teams that picked up a couple of players from the re-entry draft, and one of those players was Lucas Ingo. RSL did have a couple of days for them to eventually work through a contract to acquire him outright through the re-entry draft. Well, it seems like that has now been worked out, even though it kind of took a little bit longer than it needs to be. And yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how Ingo would fit for RSL. He's basically reuniting with one of his FC Cincinnati teammate and his fullback DeAndre Yetland there, and it's going to be interesting to see how RSL would do with these two Cincinnati fullbacks that they did for the most part okay during their time with Cincinnati, but kind of really fell down the pecking order, eventually kind of being forced out in the offseason. And then NYCFC, they have loaned Mitrovic Ilic to a club that I'm just gonna pronounce Rockwell well and not even gonna pronounce the last couple. I think it's probably like Czech or something. Obviously, you know me. When it comes to Czech name, it's not easy to pronounce, and especially for a club like that. But yeah, this is not a big surprise. NYCFC seems to always do this every off season where they decide to loan some of their young talented player back to Europe, and whether of course that worked out or not, that's definitely the interesting thing to see, and it also kind of maybe is something that NYCFC fans kind of criticize this team, the fact that they loan way too many some of their youngster back to Europe, and it kind of deplete the roster heading into the season. But hey, that's kind of the philosophy that they've been doing for the past couple of years, and for the most part, it's kind of worked out for them. Sometimes it doesn't, at least in the beginning of the season, because of how depleted their roster is. But for the most part, by the end of the season, it does work out pretty well, and they usually always finish strong in the second half of the season. Now, moving on in terms of some transfer rumors. So, Inter Miami once again in the mix of the transfer rumor, because that's of course is the case. It feels like every single week they're rumor with someone, and now their report to sign Rayados forward Herman Betarame for $15 million. I remember a couple of years ago when the Portland Timbers were serious in terms of trying to get Herman Betarame from Rayados, and I think the amount was almost similar to what Inter Miami is looking to get. Now, obviously, I know Rayados is trying very hard to not tell him he's pretty much one of their star number 9 on this team, but it's going to be even more difficult now for Rayados to try to keep him from going to MLS. It was a couple of years ago from the Portland Timbers compared to now being with Inter Miami, because if there's one thing we know about Inter Miami is that the Messi influence is definitely real with this team. A lot of players really want to join this team, not just because of potentially winning silverware in this upcoming season and maybe ring chasing a bit, but also when you get a chance to play with the goat himself and you have him on as your teammate, I mean that is almost a dream for every single player to do. So there's no surprise that a lot of them are taking pay cut, especially Argentine. That is, and Herman Betarame, of course, an Argentine born player, so not a big surprise why Inter Miami decided to target him. But yeah, imagine if they do get him. I mean, as the old saying go, the rich just get richer for this team, and this also is definitely once again not going to please a lot of MLS fans, and just kind of once again shows that the fact that it feels like Inter Miami is doing the same thing that the LA Dodgers are doing in MLB, where they can get away with maybe some of the rules and basically build a super team to a point where they again, I've talked about this team painting themselves a huge target heading into the season. I mean, that is not even a target anymore. I mean, they are literally the ultimate villain heading into this season. This is going to be a team that I don't care which fan base you talk to. I'm pretty sure every fan base and every team will want to have a slice of Inter Miami this upcoming season. And for Inter Miami, they don't care because at the end of the day, they're happy to have a huge target painted at them. They're happy the fact that they are the favorite and have this pressure of trying to win everything because at the end of the day, that's kind of what every MLS team wants to do, or any sports team want to do. Whether they do it in a good way or they do it like what Inter Miami is doing, which is rating every talented and also maybe kind of bend the rules a little bit to try to do so. I mean, again, I say bend the rules, but remember this team still have a DP spot, and this most likely is going to be the third DP that they're going to get if they do get Herman but Veterame over the line. Now, Austin FC, they are reported to near a deal to sign former Orlando City winger Facundo Torres. This is a big surprise. I did not expect Facu Torres to potentially come back to MLS. Yes, I know that some people say that his time in Palmeiras hasn't been as good as he would like to do, but I was not expecting the fact that he was going to come back to MLS straight away, and especially if he was going to come back to MLS, I would have thought maybe Orlando City might think about getting him back, especially of how good he was doing his time with Orlando. And if Austin can get him, that's a huge signing for this Austin team. Obviously, I know for Austin fans that they've been wanted to have a playmaker for a long time, especially a Driussi kind of number 10 type of playmaker for a long time. But even though Facu Torres is not that kind of a player, he is still a guy that can definitely do that playmaking skill, even from his winger position. We kind of saw a lot of that during his time with Orlando City, and yeah, if this deal does complete, this will definitely be a big signing for this Austin team, especially improving the attack. That is pretty much the big priority for this team heading in to this season. And then the Houston Dynamo, they are very close to sign Mateus Bogusz, and apparently for the with a report fee of $6 million plus $4 million in incentive is indeed true. And yeah, it is definitely a huge amount of money, but I think it is worth it considering with how Mateus Bogusz, if he can look like the guy that he was with LAFC and do the same thing with the Houston Dynamo, I think this is a good signing. I know some people say that making him a DP might not necessarily be a good thing. But when you have proven talent like Mateus Bogusz doing his time with LAFC, and if he can bring the same thing with the Houston Dynamo, I think it's going to be a really good signing for a team that definitely are making a lot of noise heading into this season. They're making a lot of big off-season signings, something that I definitely didn't think that was possible with this Dynamo team, at least in the beginning of the offseason when they were very, very quiet and a lot of Dynamo fans were once again frustrated with the front office not making the the moves to improve the team. But now all of a sudden it feels like it's bang 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 for them when it comes to some of the moves, and they have definitely looked like a team that could once again compete in the West next season if all the pieces fall right into them. Now, the latest Josh Sargent to Toronto FC saga now sees that Sean Sargent is forced to train with the Norwich U21 team. Now, obviously, Josh Sargent has repeatedly said that he wants to go to Toronto FC, but Norwich repeatedly said they're not going to let him do so because they're still in this relegation fight to a point where it's kind of started getting ugly with the way that Josh Sargent is kind of sitting out and almost kind of in a holdout period with Norwich City right now, and as a result, because of this holdout period, he's basically banished to the U21 team as a resort. So again, it'll be very interesting to see how long this holdout would be. And again, for TFC, they are definitely in hot pursuit to try to get him, and they're even upping the price if they are able to do. But we shall see as this saga continue whether or not if Josh Sargent will get his wish, and whether if Norwich, I know they really want to keep Sargent. As much as I know he hasn't had the best start during his time with Norwich, he is still considered to be one of the more important players that can really help them in a relegation fight in the championship right now. So yeah, we'll see how this latest saga is going to take a turn, and whether if TFC can finally secure probably the biggest target that they've been looking for this off season. Now, Sporting KC, they are reported to sign Universidad defender Cesar Inga for $1.6 million. Now, that is a bit high for a defender in terms of the cost, especially looking for someone in South America. Well, actually, scratch that. I wouldn't say that that's high. That's right about the range that is. And again, I talked about before with Sporting KC. It seems like with their new ownership, we're being very ambitious when it comes to some of the signings that they have and willing to spend money. Maybe this is an example of it. And it's pretty clear that when you look at this SKC team, there's a lot that they need to do. Defense is definitely the number one area that they will have to focus. I mean, I mentioned before how they neglect that when it was clearly the biggest need that they had for the past couple of seasons. So it's good the fact that they're addressing that, and we'll see whether or not if they can get this deal done, and we'll really hope that he will be a guy that will really improve what has been just a really bad defense in the past couple of years for this SKC side. And then Orlando City, speaking of defender, is also in advanced talk to sign Brazilian youth international center back Lago from Flamengo. Now, he was the captain for the Brazilian youth national team as well, and there's also a lot of interest in Europe of getting him as well. So this one is not as easy compared to the last one for at least for Orlando City to get. They're definitely going to have to outbid a couple of team in Europe to try to get him. And if they do decide to get him, I think this is a good signing for Orlando City, especially them finding a Rodrigo Schlegel replacement. I think this is definitely a perfect one, probably even better than when they decided to let go of Schlegel this off season as well. But obviously, it's not going to be easy because he is definitely being hot pursued by a lot of team in Europe as well. And then St. Louis City is report to sign Barcelona and former LAFC defender Mamadou Fall. Now, despite the fact that Mamadou Fall did make that jump to Europe with Barcelona, he's been kind of spent mostly with the second team as well. He hasn't really made a single appearance with the main team as well, and it feels like his development in Europe has kind of stalled out a bit. So this is another example of an MLS player maybe make the jump to Europe, but didn't quite work out, and now it seems like he's gonna be back to MLS. And yeah, with Mamadou Fall coming back to MLS and going to St. Louis City, we'll see whether or not if he can do well. I mean, he did pretty well doing his time with LAFC as well, and knowing that St. Louis is another team that desperately needs some defensive help, they're definitely hoping that he's gonna be someone that's similar quality in terms of what he did with LAFC. Because if they can get that version of Mamadou Fall, I think that would really booster this St. Louis City backline heading into this next season. And then speaking of LAFC, they are report to sign a Swedish U21 international player, Amin Bodri, for 3.3 million euros, and it would be considered a U22 initiative signing. Now, apparently, he's a central attacking midfielder. It's kind of interesting the fact that for LAFC, and I'll definitely get to that when I talk about them because tonight is going to be the night where I'm going to talk about LAFC in the Moving Forward series episode. Where I think as good as they are on the attacking end, there is definitely still question when it comes to the defensive end, especially with the lack of depth on the defense as well. It's kind of interesting the fact that they haven't really quite focused too much in terms of adding depth and have really kind of boosted the attack. Now that obviously could be a good thing because when you booster the attack and add more depth in terms of it, then you might be able to focus on a more entertaining brand of soccer. But the problem is that when you look at the current head coach that took over for Steve Chernow in that Spark and Marco Santos, he was considered when doing his last job with Vancouver, he was considered one of the head coach that really kind of hold the team back, even with the talent that is in disposal. And that's kind of something I'll definitely talk about in my moving forward series episode, where I feel like for Marco Santos, he's gonna feel the pressure immediately, taking charge of this team with all the talent with his disposal. I know I've said before for LAFC, you don't really need to mingle too much because you know the talent will definitely come through throughout the season, and that's going to be something that Mark Dos Santos got to realize. He can't just kind of undo all the good thing that Toronto does and put in his philosophy that maybe doesn't really quite worked out and kind of hold the team back like what we saw during his time with the Whitecaps. And yeah, I do think that he's definitely going to be under pressure straight away. In fact, when we do the hot seat index in the upcoming months, actually next months that is, I feel like Mark Dos Santos is definitely going to be right up there in terms of having the hot seat, knowing that he is a guy that isn't really a popular kind of replacement for Steve Cherundolo. But that being said, when Steve Cherundolo came into the job of LAFC, he wasn't a popular hiring, and it worked out for that for them. So maybe that might be the same case for Marc Dos Santos as well. But we'll definitely talk about that a little later tonight when I talk about the moving forward series of LAFC. And then lastly, RB Leipzig captain David Rim have mentioned that he's already envisioned that he would play in MLS in the future. Now, this is kind of interesting considering that he's still in his prime of his career. I think he's only 27 years old, and the fact that he's already talked about he want to come to MLS. Usually, we see maybe some players in Europe that is kind of near, or some of these superstar player in Europe that is kind of near the end of the career and kind of said that, well, maybe I might be going to MLS for one last paycheck, but not like in the midst of their prime of their career. So yeah, it would be very interesting to see whether, of course, that is the case. And because he's with RB Leipzig, you know that the Red Bulls are probably going to see that and say that, yep, that might be our one of our future target, because that's kind of the thing that the New York Red Bulls have been doing, trying to sign a couple of players from the Red Bull family. Though I say that, but they've been trying very hard to get Timo Werner from RB Leipzig, and it didn't really quite work out. And to the day, we still don't know exactly where Werner is going to go. The last we heard, of course, is him uh, potentially going to the Quakes, but there's been a lot of really silence when it comes to that. So maybe that move might not be materialized as quickly as I thought originally it was going to do. And then moving on in terms of next news and now away from transfer rumors. So Nick Lima has officially announced his retirement after just 8 season playing in MLS, and it's kind of sad to see that Nick Lima's career kind of fizzed out at the end. I mean, I remember when he came to the Quakes as a homegrown back in 2017, and the potential that he shown in that first season with the Quakes. I mean, he definitely had a lot of upside to a point where he plays so well that he got himself an appearance with the U.S. men's national team. But unfortunately, as I've mentioned before, whenever a Quakes player get a chance to be in the national team spotlight, it's almost like there's a curse going on where whenever a Quakes player goes to the national team, yeah, most likely they're gonna suffer a huge regression. We have seen it so many times in the past, and this is an example of it. He just really was never the same after coming back from the national team. Got traded to Austin, didn't quite work out there either. Got traded to New England, didn't work out there either, and then come back to the Quakes, maybe revitalize his career, didn't work out there either. So it just kind of got to a point where his career really kind of fizzed out. Though I'm kind of surprised the fact that he retired outright and maybe not even think about going to the USL, because I think he could still do well in the USL as well, even though he's in his 30s. But I guess that's obviously his decision to make, and even though it was a short career, I mean I'll definitely maybe making a video talk about Nick Lima in terms of his career, and that it's another example of a player that a big what if player, of the fact that what if he continue to go through high in terms of the projectile that he has in the beginning of career, and not get bitten by the classic U.S. men's national team curse that it feels like it's always been bitten with a lot of these quick young players in the past. And then last but not least, Inter Miami has announced that they're looking to play in the Copa Libertadores. Now, I don't know how that, of course, is going to work out, and we'll see whether or not if that also means that they might not even be participating in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Although I think the Copa Libertadores and the CONCACAF Champions Cup, I think both of those competitions doesn't play around the same time, so I think Inter Miami can work around it. And for a long time, we've been talking about an MLS team playing in the Copa Libertadores. I know there in the past we saw a couple of Liga MX team done it, and some of them has mixed success. I think the most successful was Tigres when they made it all the way to the final of the Copa Libertadores. Unfortunately, that I think they lost to River Plate in the final, but that was definitely a huge moment for North American soccer and even for Mexican soccer as well. Even though I know that Tigres team was absolutely loaded. I mean that team had Prime Geniac in their team, and then and all the other loaded kind of player on that Tigres side. And with the way that we know that Inter Miami is absolutely loaded from top to bottom, there could be a case that they can definitely make a good run in the Copa Libertadores, and especially with Messi once again having a chance to win another continental competition. I mean, why not? I mean, I feel like that could be the case. Now, obviously, if you're an MLS fan, and especially with the way that a lot of teams and fans hate what Inter Miami is doing, do you think this might be a great idea to root them on in terms of hoping that them carrying the flag of MLS in the Copa Libertadores? That's where the conflict will begin, and I think this will be the same case in the CONCACAF Champions Cup as well. As much as I do love to see an MLS team climb over the mountain of the CONCACAF Champions Cup like the Seattle Sounder did a couple of years ago. I mean, I know Inter Miami is probably the most likely team to be crowned as the CONCACAF Champions Cup champion, and they're definitely going to be one, if not the favorites, heading into this year's CCC as well. But at the same time, because of all the things that they've done, and some of the general public of MLS have kind of been outcry in terms of some of the rule breaking that they've been doing, even though uh, they they've been complying with most of the strict roster rule that MLS has been. I don't know if the general public and just the MLS fandom in general would really think that Inter Miami might be the team that they would definitely be rooting for as the team that carries the flag of MLS in such a prestige competition like the Copa Libertadores. I mean, besides the UEFA Champions League, the Copa Libertadores is the second most prestigious club competition in the world. And yeah, for a long time I've been wanting MLS team to do so. I don't know if Inter Miami, even if it's a good thing for the league, I don't know if just the general public would be willing to root for them and hope that they, of course, will do well in that competition. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at the news of the week episode, as always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these news, and if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board. As always, let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to give it a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.